first things first. Anyone here who requires me to speak English or who would like me to speak English? So we got a winner. Perfect. No, it's fine. If I'm speaking too fast, because I tend to speak too fast, please ask me. And if you need anything translated into German, also please ask me. So, Ansible, future directions. I'd like to talk about where we are heading with the Ansible project from the perspective of developers, as well as where is the entire ecosystem heading to. Before I go into the details, a few words about me. Who am I? Name is Roland Wolters. You can find me, you can find me by the name Roland Wolters, but actually there's someone else also called Roland Wolters living close to me, focused on Windows. So it's probably easier if you just check out my handle, Liquidad. It's my Twitter handle, it's my LinkedIn, not LinkedIn, but my GitHub handle and so on. I don't want to go too much into detail who I am, but I got like 10 years of experience, started as a consultant, became a project manager, joined Reddit as a solution architect, and became a product marketing manager, which is a technical role, even if there is the word marketing. So, and on all these years, I always had to deal with automation. You know, it started with Bash scripts, Python scripts, self-written configuration management frameworks, CF Engine. Who knows CF Engine? Who worked with CF Engine? Who likes CF Engine? I knew that. So, Puppet, Ansible, Salt, and so on. So, over all the years in my business life, automation was always there. And what I'd also like to say is it's not only my business life, it's also my private life where automation is a key component. Why? Because 1.5 years ago, I became father, and my girlfriend kind of overperformed. So I got triplets. And I can tell you, there's a lot of automation going on. So if you want to speak to someone about data center automation, feel free to reach out to me. And if you want to know how to automate children and kids and everything related to kids, also feel free to reach out to me. And of course, as you see, they can already run playbooks, and of course, they love Ansible, right? So, to understand the future, or to have a good look into the future, we need to understand the past. And for that reason, I'd like to speak a little bit about where do we come from in terms of Ansible? Why did we grow, and what are our strengths? So, to start, this is the very first commit we had to the Ansible repository. This is from Michael Jahren. So if you have a checkout of the Ansible GitHub repository, you can actually look at this. So it all started a couple of years ago, so 2012. And right from the beginning, the idea was to create a very simple environment. Simple. It's flickering. I hope this doesn't die. So from the beginning, it was meant to be simple. Simple enough for everyone to use. In the beginning, it started with people who were Linux admins who wanted to use this. Over the time, however, we also reached out to other people, or other people reached out to us, which made us powerful. So it's not only Linux administrators anymore, it's also Windows people, it's networking people. Any networking person here in the room? Very good, so I can pick on them. So if you want to work together with networking people, you have to be really simple. So imagine if you're talking to networking people, there is no chance to win anything with them if you ask them to write Ruby code, for example, or COBOL or whatever. And we even in these days incorporate security people, security operation practitioners. And we can be this powerful and simple at the same time because we also are agentless. So we just use as a means of communication the interfaces which are already there. And all this is with batteries included, right? If you install Ansible, you immediately have all the modules in there. You can talk to, what do we have? Containers, cloud, you can do identity management, you can talk to network machines, to Windows servers, and so on. It's all there. And this is one of the strengths of Ansible. This is the reason why many people love to use it and still love to use it. And in fact, right from the beginning, Ansible was built in a modular way because we said, and this is a quote strengthened in this perspective, that modularity and options, providing people the options to pick whatever they need, really gives value and gives other people the possibility to build more with this. And it worked, right? I mean, if you look up the GitHub Octoverse, so the regular GitHub report about the most successful open source projects, we are among the top 10. So Ansible is in fact one of the biggest open source communities out there. In fact, we are roughly the size of Kubernetes. I mean, Kubernetes is a little bit more hip these days, but their size of the community is roughly as large as ours. Of course, it's open source, right? So it's quite hard to say, is this real? Or is this just people saying, yeah, this looks great? I mean, who of you thought that OpenStack was great when they first heard of it? Come on. Only 2 people, okay. Usually these are more people. So many people heard of OpenStack and loved it, and many people really thought this is a cool idea. But it took years until people actually used it in production. So the question remains with Ansible, is this really used out there? And with open source, it's hard to identify. But at least as Red Hat, we can identify how many people out there are using it, because we have the subscriptions we are selling. And in fact, we checked in March 2018, or we reached the goal of 1 million subscribed machines. So 1 million servers out there were managed by Ansible. And only 7 months later, this number doubled. So 2 million machines out there were managed by Ansible. And in fact, this summer, we even crossed the 4 million barrier. So 4 million machines out there are managed by Ansible and subscribe to Red Hat. And there are indications, or we have an estimated guess that there are out there many more machines which are not subscribed to Red Hat but managed by Ansible. So the entire number of machines managed by Ansible is probably way bigger than 4 million. So it's perfect, right? Everything is great. We have the perfect modular perspective. We are powerful, agentless, simple. We have millions of machines out there. You could say, we did it. We won. Unfortunately, if you say this, you sit down and you stop and you do not progress anymore. And the problem is we really need to progress because there's quite some growing pain. For example, we got so many contributions that it's really becoming hard to look across all these contributions. To give you an idea, who of you knows the firewall or the security vendor Checkpoint? Ever heard the name? A few hands, thank you. So Checkpoint has a large variety of devices and applications, and they added between Ansible 2.8 and 2.9, they just refreshed a couple of their modules and added a few more ones. Altogether, over 100 new modules, and updated another 20, I think. And Checkpoint is only one of the many, many contributors to Ansible. So from each release to the next, we have more and more code we need to review, which becomes really a problem because in the end, who wants to review code? Yes, sometimes it's fine, but you just don't want to sit down and review code all day long. So the community, it becomes more and more a problem for the community to review all this stuff and accept it. In fact, we have a bottleneck of participation right now. If you do a pull request with Ansible right now, it might take months until it is accepted or even looked at because there are so few people who are doing this. Or there are many people who are doing this, but there is so much code right now. At the same time, our release cadence gets longer and longer. So we are speaking about something between, I think, around 9 months right now. So just to take the number, if we release every 9 months, that means that, let's say you have a cool new project with the name of Cool Project, perfect. He has a project Cool, and he says, I want to automate it. I want to embed it in my automated environment. So he releases a set of modules for it and wants to bring these modules upstream as Ansible. It might take 9 months until this takes place. So he writes his Cool project. 9 months later, he can actually start automating it. And in these 9 months, maybe his company is already bought or goes bankrupt, or he moves on to another Cool project because he's so innovative, right? This is a serious problem right now. And this becomes even more problematic because with Ansible 1.9, we started to automate Windows. With Ansible 2.1, we started to automate networking. With Ansible 2.7 or 2.6, we started to automate security environments. So we broaden our use cases and get even more people on board, and even more contributors and more people with ideas and requirements. And even people started embedding Ansible in other projects and their tools. So again, more people doing this. So how do you bring all this together? How do you actually work with this? Or to put it in another question, what is the current situation of the Ansible project? And let me show you an image for this. We are here right now, and I love it. And I'm sure you've seen it before. Probably this is me. So what we have right now, of course, we could say, you know what, we just throw everything away and we start fresh with Ansible 3.0. And I think most of the people here in the room already did like, we throw everything away and start completely new in some project in their life. And I guess most of you know that throwing everything away is usually, it sounds cool in the beginning, but in the end is not that much of a good idea. So what we really need to do, we need to work on Ansible while we are still using it. So we need to revolution or evolve the entire system without throwing it all away. So what do we do? What does it mean? What do we need to change? And to bring it down to one word, we will try, or we are evolving, and Ansible needs to evolve to a platform. And this platform is one phrase to describe all the changes I'm going to talk about. So what does platform actually mean? First and foremost, it's a nice name, of course. And it's also great for marketing, by the way. Platform always rings with customers and especially analysts. But to be serious here, a platform for us means a mind change. So in the past, it was always, when we wrote Ansible, we said, whenever there is a module outside, this module needs to be part of Ansible. As long as it's not part of Ansible, something is wrong. Either the module is crap or we just haven't accepted it yet. But in the end, everything needs to be part of Ansible. By becoming a platform, we change it. The perspective changes to, in the future, it will be normal for code to sit outside of the main repository. We will expect and even motivate people to have their code, their modules, their whatever, outside of the core Ansible distribution. And this is basically what's behind platform. Sounds easy, right? I mean, yeah. So they just ship their code outside of our GitHub repository. What's the deal? First and foremost, people might say, hey, what about the batteries included? All the modules which are part of Ansible, which make Ansible so powerful. What about them? We will keep them in Ansible as part of the core distribution, but we are more looking at all the people who are pushing modules in our way and connection plugins and everything all day long. So we are more looking at the future. So, what's the idea? Currently, we are here. We have the core executable, we have all modules, all plugins, all the documentation for it, everything in one repository. And the idea is, in the future, to focus on the core platform, on the core executable with the core modules, and work on this. But of course, that means that these pieces have to be somewhere. How do we do this in the future? How do we enable people to have modules and plugins and documentation and share with others? Where could this sharing happen? And we have a platform for this already. Right now we have Ansible Galaxy, a place where people can share roles. So the idea is, why not enable Galaxy to not only have roles, but also modules, plugins, documentation, and so on? Of course, Galaxy can't do this right now because Galaxy is focused on roles and is, to be honest, very simple. But the idea is to reach this point. At the same time, if we want to do this, this brings a few assumption changes. So let's say we have his cool project. He calls his cool project, well, it's Project Cool. The problem is, this gentleman right in front of me comes up with another cool project and by chance calls it also Project Cool. So we have two projects, two modules with this very same name, Cool. how do you work with this? You need namespacing. You need to introduce ways of namespacing, ways of managing incompatibilities here. Also, imagine we have his cool project and her cool project and his green project and his blue project and so on. So you get a lot of external content. We don't want Ansible to take like 5 minutes during each startup just to collect all this stuff, right? It still needs to be very, very performant. I mean, after all, Ansible is about simple and powerful. It just works. So it shouldn't be very complicated and it shouldn't take long. And another problem is, who of you has experience with Ansible Galaxy? Who looked at Ansible Galaxy once at least? Okay, good, almost half the people. So for the other half who never looked in Ansible Galaxy, do this. Go to galaxy.ansible.com and look for Apache roles. You will, I love it, always people start laughing when I take this example. So what you will find is roughly 1,000 roles about Apache, or maybe even 10,000. The first, let's say, 10 roles are good, have good content, well written and so on. And the other 9,990 are, how do I say it nicely? They are not of the quality you would like to have it. They're crap. So imagine if we go back to here, if we start handing over modules and plugins and docs, or if we enable the community to just write this on their own and just put it somewhere, the danger is that the quality massively declines. That each and every one just says, yeah, I don't have to go through the review process of Ansible anymore. Yeah, this works for me, right? I just push it. So we need ways to actually handle quality control and testing. And last but not least, we need to have versioning. I mean, he says, okay, I updated my cool project to project 2.0. So I'm pushing out new stuff, but other people are relying on 1.0 of his code. So we need versioning here. And these are all things we do not have right now, or we didn't have in Ansible 2.7 at least. So what does it mean? We have requirements. And how do we fix all these points I just mentioned? Basically, we need a new packaging format for Ansible content. We had the roles packaging format, which was nice, but just a start. We need something way better. And of course, if you have a packaging format, you need a content package management for this, so a tool to handle all this stuff. And as I mentioned, we need developer tools. We need to enable developers to write actually good code, and not so that he's actually able to produce good code and understand what good code means, and not just pushes out. Of course, he always writes good software, but imagine he would just push out crappy stuff. And this basically means for us that we need to enhance roles and need to enhance the entire Galaxy framework. So let's speak about the changes which are coming up. First, new packaging format. As I said, the main change of the entire Ansible ecosystem future is that we are moving to this. This is the core, collections. They will be independent and external to the core engine, and they will enable others to consume or to provide their content in their own and their release cadence and so on. At the same time, it needs to be simple, lightweight, so basically consistent with the Ansible way, right? And by the way, it should also be able to contain not only one module, but multiple modules, multiple plugins, so that he's able to ship one collection fully embracing his cool project with everything which is needed for it. Or to take the example of Checkpoint, the Checkpoint is able to push one collection out containing hundreds or over 100 modules, roles, connection plugins, and so on, everything they need to manage properly their firewalls. So the Ansible content collections are a format to do exactly this. And the idea is also they should lower the barrier of entry for people consuming it as well as people providing it. In the end, the idea is to provide tech partners a direct-to-user automation. Tech partners here means, of course, other companies, but also think about all the open source projects out there, Kubernetes and so on and so on. They also want to have ways to connect to Ansible. and to provide stuff around their solutions for connected to Ansible. And if we have this packaging format, of course, no, this is a short screenshot. This is short listing. So how does an Ansible content collection actually look like? Basically, we have two folders, the plugins folder and the roles folder. Plugins is everything where Python code is in. So modules, module utils, action plugins, connection plugins can be in here as well. And the roles is everything you want to provide in terms of YAML code. So roles. By the way, I should have asked this 20 minutes ago, but who here in the room is not familiar with Ansible? I'm very sorry for the 3 people in the back. I should have done a short introduction of Ansible. Find me after the discussion, after the presentation, and I can give you a short idea. I guess to some of the people, the term roles doesn't mean anything. So roles is a way to package a set of playbooks. So all the playbooks you, for example, need to bring up an Apache server and all the other files, like configuration files, templates, and so on. This can all be packaged in roles. So, and how do I actually use these collections? This is a playbook, so the basic piece of automation used in Ansible. You send this playbook to the Ansible command line and it executes it. And for those people who has never seen a playbook here in the room, thanks. So this is new for you. Here we actually say use these collections. This is a way how you introduce them to your playbook, and this is a way how you actually call them. And on purpose, we used like a conflicting situation here. Imagine we have the ping module, which is very simple, but imagine Red Hat creates where is it? Yeah, Red Hat creates an even better ping module, and someone else creates let's say a blue ping module. And how do you actually use all the different ping modules, although basically the module name itself is always ping? So here you see how you reference a module from a collection. So, of course, if you have these collections, if you have this new format, you need a new packaging tool. So we realized, okay, Ansible Galaxy is not up for the job, so let's throw it away, create something new, exciting, where we are not bound by the limits of the past. And they created something where they had, which was simple, flexible, and so on, and it brought us Mazer, the tool Mazer. And as I said, how it's often with these things, they created Mazer and realized, Mazer is cool, but we still have a lot of stuff in Ansible Galaxy which makes sense. So basically, they took Mazer and migrated all the interesting stuff back to Ansible Galaxy again. So, in fact, to manage collections, you can use Ansible Galaxy. Word of advice here, if you want to play around with this, use Ansible Galaxy from the newest Ansible 2.9 release candidate, at least RC4, because everything else is broken. And this comes from experience, because I wanted to prepare a demo and it broke. So feel free to play around with it, but really take the newest, in best case, the current devil. And I'm speaking about release dates and so on at the end of the presentation. And as I said, we need to enable the developers to actually write good code. We need to enable them to write good content. How do we do this? First and foremost, there is a complex testing framework called Molecule. This was written by Cisco and was contributed to the Ansible project, I think last year. The Ansible project picked it up and is streamlining this more and more to actually enable developers using it. We have more simple tools like Ansible Test, which is a lint and sanity test, or which can integrate lint and sanity test. We have Ansible Lint itself, which just does basic tests of your YAML code. And what we started doing is, we have galaxyansible.com. As I said, 10,000 Apache roles, 9,000 of them are pretty crappy. So what we started is, we brought in a social component. You can actually start rating content, which helps. Rating is always great, right? Like Amazon. So you can actually start saying, hey, does this role actually do what it says, or is it installing a Bitcoin miner? And this is an actual problem, because people just upload roles. They say this is an Apache role, and what's basically done in the background is something totally different. So we added these ways, these means of rating the content which is there, to give others who are basically consuming the code an idea of, hey, what do I have here? Another question, what about Red Hat? So far I talked about the community, and often I get the question, well, Red Hat is so huge and Red Hat has so much money and so much power, can't they like fuel this process? My first answer to this is Red Hat is not as big as people think. So nevertheless, we try to push this process as well. What we do, we reach out to our partners. So we have a lot of partners, and this is one of the strengths of Red Hat. This is our business, right? So we walk up to our partners and tell them, if you write collections and work together with us, and if you write them in a proper quality, we will certify you. We will take over support with your customers. We will manage everything. This is, of course, a very good story for our customers, but for the community, this is great because we have a trigger now for partners to actually write good code and to write good collections, move to these collections. And by the way, we even have another incentive for the partners. We do have, as a product offering, a so-called automation hub, which is basically a private galaxy. So a customer can go to some place, have his automation or her automation hub, where they just have all the collections they want to use. You know, in Galaxy, there will be at some point 1 million collections, I'm sure. And half of them will be Apache collections, if you want them or not. But in in Automation Hub, you will only see the content you want to see, and partners can push in here directly. So we are working closely together with partners to make them adopt the collections idea in the first place, and secondly, make them write great collections, which hopefully triggers other people to jump on the train as well. And I'm way faster through my presentation than I thought. To summarize all this, from a development perspective, Ansible is broken out into multiple components: the core engine, core modules and plugins, community collections, and basically the supported partner modules and plugins. So partner collections, which are coming in the future. This is, if you are a developer of Ansible content on one of these areas, be prepared for these changes and identify yourself, where am I here? If you're contributing to the core engine anyway, nothing will change for you. But if you wrote, let's say, I don't know, Jenkins modules or something, you might find yourself here in the future. From a deployment perspective, in the future, you will still have the batteries included method. There is one dot missing here where the collections will be interesting for you in the future, and the supported enterprise method through the automation hub, which I just mentioned. So all these methods of deployment in the future depend heavily on Ansible Galaxy, which is, I know, a thing for all the people who are on air-gapped environments. But we have ways to deal with this as well. If you want to read more about this, there is a very good blog post available on ansible.com/blog, which has thoughts on restructuring the Ansible project. Go through it, read through it. It gives you a very good summary and also deep dive on what we just talked about. I've spoken about the entire Ansible community project so far. The question still remains, well, there's more to Ansible, right? There's also AWX. So what's coming in these terms? And I added this slide because I get the questions otherwise anyway. So what are we planning for AWX? What is the community planning for AWX? First, AWX, and thus our product Ansible Tower, is basically focusing on scalable execution, executing across thousands of nodes. I'm not sure who of you has followed the Ansible Fest, which was, I think, 2 weeks ago in Atlanta. Okay, one hand, great. Thank you, by the way. So I'm not sure. Probably most of you have missed who is now our largest reference customer on the planet. It's Azure. Anyone heard of Azure so far? So Azure networking is done and managed by Ansible. Just to give you an idea of the size where Ansible is used. But to be very honest, this is probably the largest setup I've ever seen, but the second largest setup I've ever seen was actually here in Munich at an Ansible meetup, where someone presented his setup, and it was about how he sorts the inventory and started by, yeah, I group my machines by continents, which was, how big is your environment? I don't know, it was 100,000 or more machines, I do not remember. So we do have to focus, or Ansible, AWX is our tool where we actually want to make sure that we can cater to these large environments, to these massive scales, because there is hardly any larger scale than Azure out there. Yes, AWS probably, but that's it. At the same time, it should be the centralized automation console. This is AWX is the point where you start with your automation, where you start looking into the automation. And what we are working on very much right now is integrating AWX with other pieces. So think of webhooks here, GitOps support, and so on. We are halfway there yet, but there's still a lot to do in terms of webhooks, actually integrating. At the same time, from our perspective, in terms of Red Hat and not the community here, is, or as part of the community, is we are working product-wise on software as a service offerings around Ansible, which gives a little bit more of analytics perspective in Ansible, and the automation hub I already mentioned, like a private galaxy. And what we are focusing on is actually network and security automation collections and also Windows, so that we are pushing this use case more and more. And actually this gets a lot of traction. So network, we have this for I think 2 years now. Security, we announced it last year and pushed it this year at Ansible Fest. It gets a lot of requests by partners. And Windows, everyone is interested in Windows automation, because apparently in the Windows ecosystem, automation is not as often or not as available as I previously thought. So when are we getting this? Timelines. Ta-da! In fact, Ansible 2.9 will be I think I'm standing on a cable here. Anyway, Ansible 2.9 will be released either end of October or early November, and will have full support for collections. We already had collection technical preview in Ansible 2.8. I think the thing is failing me any second now, so I'll speed up. We had collection support in Ansible 2.8 already, but as I said, don't use it that way. Pick the newest development version of Ansible 2.9 if you want to play around with collections. In Ansible 2.10, we will also have collections and will have a better way of the certification process. This is something we're still working on, as I said, to push partners to actually embrace the collections idea. And in Ansible 3.0, we are actually looking at removing partner content from the core release. So in Ansible 2.9 and 2.10, you will still have, I don't know, 2,000 something modules in the entire Ansible release. But with Ansible 3.0, we might reduce this number and then more or less force everyone to embrace collections. And coming to an end here, if I say something, before, this is about community. As I said, Ansible lives by the community, and Ansible is big because of the community. So contribute. We are happy to take contributors. We are very open to this. If you have questions about it, reach out to me. I can say that I'm a very small part of the community, but I am, and I have my pushes to the Ansible repository as well. It's fun, and it's a very active community, so join if you like. And that's it. So far, questions?